And what is going on, Devils fans? As always, it is your host, your best friend, your confidant, and your number one source, Neil Villapiano. And welcome to another edition of the Devil State of Mind podcast right here on the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Sports Wire Radio, the best place to get everything you need to know about your I've run out of words to describe how the injuries affect this New Jersey Devils team. And it's always, Devils fans, unless you're Jack Hughes, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you're checking out this podcast episode. And thank you guys, as always, for taking time out of your day to check this episode out. As always, greatly appreciate. Really quickly, shout out to our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. When you sign up with DraftKings using our promo code THPN, all you got to do is bet $5. And if your bet hits, you get $300 instantly in risk-free bet money. It's a perfect opportunity to get in on all the huge cash prizes. Again, sign up with our promo code THPN, bet $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 instantly in risk-free bets, courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. And as always, Devils fans, make sure to bet responsibly. All right, Devils fans, we have an exciting guest joining us. It's been a minute since I've actually had a guest on, but been wanting to have this guy on for quite some time. If you guys know that I write for Pucks and Pitchforks over on Fanside. I put out a lot of stuff, but this guy is the big reason that I'm here working for Pucks and Pitchforks. He is the head writer and editor of Pucks and Pitchforks. It's with great pleasure that we bring on my good friend, Nick Villano. Nick, who is now sideways, apparently. Out there we go. Now we fixed it. Let's go on, Nick. How you doing today? And welcome to the Devil State of Mind podcast.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I was looking at it, I was like, I don't know if that's going to go on air that way. We just did a mic check and it wasn't that way, but that's okay. I'll come up and down. It's all good. But yeah, I'm doing good.
It's just keeping everybody focused here, I think, is the best way. Keep them on their toes a little bit.
Making sure I'm paying attention.
Absolutely. So yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on today. I've been wanting to get you on for quite some time. Love, obviously, what you bring to Pucks and Pitchforks and all the articles that you put out, and also the support you give me with all of my writing as well. As always, I really, really do appreciate it. So let's just jump into what we want to jump into today.
Sure.
And we got to address the elephant in the room. It's been a couple days, obviously, since we got the news, but it's still fairly new, as over last week, after the Devils' emotional come-from-behind win against the Chicago Blackhawks, in which the Devils, were able to secure that one, and Shimon Nemec getting his first career hat trick, it was about as high could be in terms of emotions and vibes. And then around 4:30 in the afternoon on Friday, Elliot Friedman posts an article on Twitter without any caption, because Twitter's like that now, so you have no idea what it was about. So you click on it, and immediately it says, unfortunate news, as Jack Hughes got hurt at the Devils team dinner. I just had to sit there for a moment before I read it, and I just had to compose myself and just be like, what the hell is going on? Like, what do you mean he got hurt at dinner? And as the story is, most people know by now, Jack Hughes and obviously the rest of the team were at a dinner at a place called Chicago Cut in downtown Chicago. And Jack Hughes apparently leaned on a glass and ultimately cut himself. And as the Devils put out last week, Jack Hughes underwent successful surgery on his pinky finger, as it was confirmed by David Pagnotta of the fourth period. And he will be out 8 weeks. He'll be able to return to play in 8 weeks, and the Devils will reevaluate him in 6 weeks. So whether you want to say 8 weeks, 2 months, regardless, Jack Hughes is going to miss the next 25-ish plus games.
I think it's 30.
I think it's 30. Yeah, well, if it ends up being 8 weeks, which it seems like, I think it'll be 30, 31 games. Once again, Jack Hughes will have missed some time, but the good news is he will not be out for the rest of the season, and there's also a very good chance he still ends up playing for Team USA at the Winter Olympics in Milano in February. But Nick, to kind of backtrack a little bit, I wanted to get your thoughts just on your initial reaction and then overall your feelings about this whole thing as the story played out over the last several days.
So, weirdly, my initial reaction was, this is really going to impact his legacy. Not in so much that he got hurt in the way he got hurt. Like, it's an unfortunate incident. Devils keep saying it's a freak accident. Elliot Friedman even put an update on Monday's podcast, 32 Thoughts podcast, that it sounded like it was just like what he's heard is just like you can't even believe it would happen. But Jack Hughes really needed a full season.
Right.
Not for the Devils. The Devils are winning without him right now, or at least they beat the Capitals without him, and their schedule is going to get a little bit easier. Like, they've hit a lot of the really hard parts of their schedule. But my first initial thought was like, man, like he to be that top tier player, he really needed a full season, at least 75 games and 100 points. Show everybody this is who you are. And clearly, like, I've never seen, like, he's always been a motivated player, an easily motivated player, but I've never seen him play like this, like taking 9-10 shots a game. It's not like he's doing this selfishly.
Right.
He's doing this like he's getting himself open. He's using his teammates. He's still getting assists too. I think he had he finished with 10 goals and 10 assists.
He is exactly 10 goals and 10 assists for 20 points. And his last game in the win against Chicago, he had 2 assists and 11 shots on goal.
And didn't he had that crazy assist to Mercer? Am I remember that right?
Yes, and he made a really nice feed on a backhand to Nason, who then fed it to Nemec for his second goal of that game, which ultimately tied it and forced it to eventually go to overtime.
Sure. Yeah, and like you kind of mentioned, just like the high of the high that was that game. They came back from 1-0, 2-1, and 3-2 to tie the game and then win it in overtime in just ridiculous fashion. The great pass by Jacob Markstrom. So I was thinking of the high to the low, and then I was thinking about Jack Hughes' legacy right off the rip.
Right.
But then you start to kind of jump into everything else, right? You jump into, what are they going to do to fill that void in the meantime? How are they not, and I'm sure we're going to jump into this too, but you also lost Cody Glass in that game. You also lost Zach McEwen in that game. So you lose 3 forwards. I know Hughes didn't get hurt in the game, but, you started the Chicago game, and now you're down 3 forwards in the Washington game. When you're already down to Donoff, you're already down, you're the injuries are already piled. So those were my 2 first thoughts, or I guess my 3 first thoughts. But I really am curious, like, how does this impact the Jack Hughes legacy? Because, you're in tune with how the Devils are covered by the national media.
100%.
I think it's 100% of outlets when previewing the Devils, it was they'll go as far as Jack Hughes will take them, or the key to the season is Jack Hughes' health, or this will be a really good team if Jack Hughes stays healthy. Like, that was always the caveat, right? It wasn't health in general, specifically Jack Hughes' health. And we saw a lot of reaction from the Devils fans. I've seen some crazy Devils fans saying you got to trade them.
I was actually going to bring up, like, I was going to get your thoughts on the biggest one that we've seen, probably reaction, is the Yelp reviews that Chicago has gotten from Devils fans over the last couple days. A lot of 1-star negative reviews. And I remember, I don't know if you saw, but I put out on Twitter, I was like, people need to touch grass. Like, this is insane that people are going out of their way to do that.
Yeah, we wrote about it in Pucks and Pitchforks just because it's a viral story.
Of course.
The good news is that most of those are going to get removed.
100%.
Yeah, there's usually a Yelp review process, and I'm sure like all those 1-stars, like, you basically just wasted your time and turned into a viral story. It's not going to last. It's not going to stick. And it's like these things, like, you're part of, the internet. This thing is on the internet. Your writing's on the internet. I'm pretty in tune with the Devils culture just because of Pucks and Pitchforks and kind of how that works. And there are some fans on there that just like to watch the world burn, and that's kind of like their thing. And like, I'm glad you have a shtick, but like, maybe like pick one that's better for the world. Like, go volunteer or something. Like, go work with Make-A-Wish, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, do something better with your life. There's so much stuff you could do with your time, and like, you're not making anyone else laugh. Like, you're making yourself laugh, and like, your echo chamber, and like, you gotta like like you said, go touch some grass and
Yeah.
do a little bit better with your life, guys. Like, I'm upset too.
Right.
Neil's upset. The fan base is upset. Do you know who's probably most upset? Is Jack freaking Hughes.
Of
Like,
course.
this is super upsetting. And the
Mhm.
way that Elliot Friedman made it sounded like the initial thought was, my season's done.
Right.
Do you know what that tells me, Neil? That must have been a gnarly cut.
I can
Like,
only like imagine like what it looked like in the moment, like when it happened, and how nerve-wracking the team was. Because it's funny because as we all have seen, there's that other picture, not from Arseny Gritziak's Telegram, but the other picture where Barstool, well-known
yeah.
Barstool Devils fan, Frank the Tank, he took a picture and everybody was like, well, everyone looks like more somber in that picture. They don't look like they're as happy. And then everyone says, like, well, where's Jack and Luke? Well, now we know, obviously, what happened. And you kind of wonder, like, what the whole team's feeling was when that ultimately occurred.
Maybe. I honestly, maybe that's where they went. I don't want to even like speculate on that
Mhm.
because I've heard that Frank wasn't there when the injury happened. So, but
Right.
again, there's a million like maybe Jack has certain um contracts that like
Mm.
that he can only appear in so many things, and because he knew that um like it's going to go on a Barstool platform, that might have impacted it.
Might have been,
So
yeah.
that
Fair.
again, and I don't know that. I'm just kind of speculating
Sure.
on. I wouldn't jump to that conclusion because I don't like because then you're thinking of like, well, a guy just had a piece of glass through his hand. Why is everybody sticking around? You know what I mean? That
Right.
would be my
Right.
first
Of
thought.
course.
I think that's kind of like you've been out before. You know that something happens that's like night's over. Yeah, we're
Yep.
gonna go home. It's
Yeah.
time to like. And if your star player just lost his pinky, I
Hmm.
think that's like I think the night's over. You know what I mean? So
For
I
sure.
I, I would definitely like kind of look at that side of things. And it's like it almost feels like Neil. This was the main event of an insane year of injuries. Like the first game. Well, first of all, you start training camp with Stefan Nason got hurt training
That was
from an injury
that
he
was
had
great.
last year that none of us knew about.
No, of
Just
course not.
poof out of nowhere came out of uh, and then you start training camp. You're like, oh, I'm really excited to see Lenny Haminaho and Shane LaChance. Oh, they're not here. Oh, they got injured at the rookie camp, and
Yeah.
nobody said anything. They're just not.
Nope.
They just poof and not here.
Yeah.
Seamus Casey got hurt in uh, the preseason, and
Preseason, it was like the third game, I think, something like
right.
that.
So he was a guy who was looking. He was looking really good. He was looking
Yeah.
like somebody who could have stolen Nemit's spot in the
Yeah.
preseason. Like they're on completely different levels now. But Nemitz had a somewhat slow start, but he eased in really well.
Yeah.
Mark McLaughlin, he wasn't supposed to be like an impactful guy to the Devils, but he's on IR, and like they said, he's nowhere near
Yeah.
coming back. Evgeny
According to
Dadonov is
Puckpedia, he's projected to return on the 29th of November. But again, I don't like we don't even know. We
yeah.
don't know what he's dealing with, and we've heard nothing.
Keith said 2 days ago that he's nowhere near returning.
So
So
there you go.
Puckpedia does their best, but like, there's only so much information out there.
Sure.
Um, and I know we're going to talk about injuries later, but like losing Dadonov on the first game to what I on the Let's Go Devils podcast we had a doctor on to talk about why did it say that the X-rays were negative and now he's out for weeks,
Hmm.
and he kind of explained to us that the imaging that they have on the road, the instant imaging is not very good
Hmm.
comparatively. So like the one you get 2 and 3 days later is much more precise imaging, it's a much better quality. So that's probably why they didn't see the broken hand. But again,
Okay.
you think that he's not going to miss any time, and he's still not back. That
No.
was 15, 16 games ago. Um, so I could go on and on. We're going to talk about the injuries, like you
Right.
said, but it was just, and then now this feels like the main event. This feels like we were building up to all these crazy injuries,
Sure.
and now the craziest injury to the most important player. So that's how it feels.
It's so funny because I was thinking about like the morning after the Devils game against Chicago. I was saying to myself, boy, this team, man, they just continue to find ways to win games, especially with how depleted they are. And like, well, yes, they haven't had any of like, the top like forwards, at that time, knock on wood, like being out. They still had a bunch of impact guys out of the lineup. Even again, no Kovacevic, no Dougie, no Brett Pesci, no Dodonov. And again, like you said, you miss Cody Glass and Zach McEwen, um, both in that game. And I feel so bad for Zach McEwen because literally in the very little time that he's actually played, he's looked actually very good in terms of his role. Like he has really kind of been impressive on, for me in terms of what he needs, what they're asking him to do on that bottom six. So for him to get hurt and now again, he's going to be out for quite some time. It's unfortunate for him. But then obviously we hear about Jack and like you said, it's like the main event. So it's like, okay, so now once again, the hockey gods have decided, okay, now it's time for the Devils to prove that they can win without their superstar player. And
Yeah.
I think they're throwing us a bone with some of the news that we've gotten today, with obviously yesterday, Hamilton, Brown, and Dodonov not only all practice, but are with the team, did morning skate,
Mhm.
and are game time decisions for tonight's game against Tampa Bay. So
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, it's I always say it's like when one guy or multiple guys come back, someone else goes, right? It's like it's never like everybody's in, and you don't have to ask Sheldon Keefe, oh, what's the status of like thus and so who might be hurt.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, even in the game against Chicago, Nick, if you remember, Markstrom was slow to get up on that third goal. It didn't look like
Mhm.
he was okay, like right away, but he played the rest of the game, and nobody asked after the game about the status of Markstrom. He's supposedly starting tonight
Mhm.
for the Devils, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, you know,
Hey, listen,
yeah,
I'm Markstrom's age. I have trouble getting up sometimes too. So it's you get creaky if you haven't done your yoga that day, like you're not as stretchy as you
right,
were. Yeah, I no. Listen,
yeah,
I get what you're saying, and Markstrom's been hurt, like right. Markstrom got hurt. That's another weird injury. Markstrom got hurt because
right,
Jake Allen got hurt and
because he
then
cramped up,
missed the third period against
right,
Columbus, and
yep,
then Jake Allen came in, got hurt, and had to keep playing because they had no more goalies.
right.
Like he had to
They
finish
couldn't
the
throw anyone
game.
in. Yep.
Yeah, so it's been one of those seasons. Listen, it's been great for Pucks and Pitchforks. I'm sure it's been great for the state of the Devil's state of mind because
Yep.
there is no shortage of things to talk about.
We
I
always,
have looked,
always.
I've
Yeah.
looked at it where I was like, I'm gonna miss this topic. I have too much to write about. There's days where I was like, I need to write 5 articles today because so much is going on, and I had to
Yeah.
spread them out. You don't want to like stack them all up on top of each other. I'm
Sure.
giving stuff to writers. You know me, like
Yeah.
you come to me and I'm like, you can write about this, or this because there's so much going
There
on.
you go.
Um, and listen, I think there's always a plethora of things to talk about, but it's so obvious right now. Everything's right in front of your face,
Right.
and and again, here's where I'll kind of put a positive spin on it, Neil. It's what is it, November 18th, I think
It's
today.
November 18th. Yep.
None of these injuries, not one, is expected to go past January. Even the
Nope.
Kovacevic.
Hmm.
Kovacevic, I think, has a chance to go past January, but they're saying January. I'm expecting end of February, but let's say we'll stick to their timeline of January. That means you have February, March, and April to get these guys rolling. That's so much time to get them rolling
Right.
into the playoffs. Like that's enough to get you fully healthy at 100%. That's enough to get your legs under you. That's enough to really get like a good, what is that going to be, like 40, 45 games of hockey?
Yeah.
You know, so they're, none of these injuries are too bad. And a lot of these guys are coming back in December. Like
Right.
Pesci, I expect back in December. Like you said, Hamilton
Hmm.
and Dodonov and Brown could be back tonight. The Brown one's weird because
That one's very strange.
it sounds like you're supposed to be back 4 games ago.
Right.
So but
Yeah.
again, I'm glad it's just taking a little more rest. And what have they gone? Have they gone 3-1 without him in the
With
past 4 games?
Brett Pesci, yes, it's been 3-1 if at this point, I believe.
So
With
it's the Devils are, and I think it's 3-0-1 because
three oh
they've gone to
right. The
overtime
one loss
5 games
in
in a row.
overtime against the Islanders. Yep.
So I'm a little worried we talked offline about the schedule. I'm a little worried about that
Mhm.
because it's cumbersome over the next, from now until Christmas. It's pretty cumbersome.
Right.
And we all remember what happened at Christmas last year, where they kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are looking at that here. I actually have a theory, Neil. I
Let's hear it.
think that the calendar year 2025 is cursed. That's what's cursed. The calendar
Yeah.
year 2025 is cursed. It's like the year of the devil, and now the devils stink. Like something's
Huh.
going wrong here. Um, I think calendar year 2026 is going to be much better. So that's why I mean, think about how many injuries they had going into the playoffs last year.
Uh,
And like nobody felt good about that, going into like the Devils don't make the playoffs that often. Yeah,
no.
yeah, that was probably the least excited I've seen a fan base going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you're missing by the end of it, half the roster missed at least one game of that series.
Right.
But like it was, there was so much bad coming out of it just from an injury standpoint. I thought they played
Sure.
well. I thought they did their best. I was actually in the building for the worst game, which is Game 4, where they
I
did
was
look flat.
also in the building for Game 4, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yes.
they just didn't look great that game, but
Nope.
the other games they look really good. But I I was curious of how they would respond to that
Right.
because A, it's Sheldon Keefe, who has a propensity of losing in the first round. How is he going to react to that?
Mhm.
Um, what is Tom Fitzgerald going to overspend in the offseason to try to make this team better? Like this team
Sure.
wasn't good enough, and he said he was going to, and he didn't. You remember, he was like, "I got to make this team better. I got to make this roster better." They said goodbye to a lot of extra pieces: the Nathan Bastions, the Tomas Tatards, the um,
Eric Hall.
Holla. They got rid of Holla. I still think they're trying to they're trying to trade Palat to a team that makes better sense.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to change. They overhauled the bottom six for sure, but I think they did a lot of good things for depth.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the depth is now the roster.
Right.
I like having either Glendening or Lamico as options for center. I don't
Mhm.
like having them both in the lineup. That is a
Yeah.
terrible situation to be in. So I I think that this team is being pushed to its brink. But when you look at it and you look at where the Devils are in the standings, like you got to say it's either Keefe or maybe like I know a lot of people are going to give love to like Marty St. Louis. I know a lot of people are going to give love to like I'm trying to think of also the top state. Like people expect Colorado to be there. People expected.
Maybe Joel Quenneville
I don't
in
think he'll.
Anaheim.
I get it. I get the sentiment. I don't think he's going to get the votes just because of his past.
It would
Um,
be I think it would be hard for a lot of hockey fans to, like, swallow that, like, if he gets that
yeah, and I
idea.
think the writers just don't want to deal with it. To be honest,
Right.
like
Of course.
I think this is one that's voted on by the writers. I think Jack
Yes.
Adams is.
This is correct. Yep.
So like again, like we don't want to get, but again, he's definitely going to be in the conversation.
Sure.
Um, even the San Jose coach, his name's escaping me, but
Ryan
Wisnowski, yeah,
Warsofsky. Yep.
um,
Mm.
he's going to be in there because San Jose's doing decent. Oh, and the guy in Pittsburgh, he's right up
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And then the guy in Sturm and Marco Sturm in Boston. Like, there's a lot of candidates,
There's a lot of guys
but
this
it's
year.
hard to not say Keefe is at the top of the list with the injuries. The development he's brought to Simone Nemitz, the development he's brought to
Right.
the top six guys, getting the most, putting his veterans in the best possible place to excel.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people look at it and be like, Luke Hughes doesn't have the best season, and the Devils are good, and they'll kind of do a 1-for-1 and be like, it must be Keefe. And I do think it's Keefe. You see the disaster that's happening in Toronto right now.
Right.
That never happened under Keefe. Keefe never had a disaster where
No.
they're going to miss the playoffs. And again, it's early, but Toronto, I think they lost 5 or 6 in a row. Toronto was a disaster,
They're
and
they're in bad
and
shape.
as bad as the Devils were last year, I don't think they were. what was the most they lost in a row? Like 3 or 4,
I think
right?
3. Yeah, the joke was last year is that we could never win 3 more than 3, and we would never lose more than
Yeah.
3.
So, again, he would right the ship for at least a game or two, and now you're seeing where there's tenacity to this team. And here's the thing, I covered the game as media on opening night, and I asked Keith, I was like, "Hey, what's the difference between this team and last year, or what's the difference between this opener and last home opener?" And it's clear that he's comfortable, and he used that word. That
Right.
comfortability is a word he's using specifically, and he tried to talk about it from his staff's point of view, but he was clearly talking about himself, where he's like, he is more comfortable here. I think there's a lot of, I'm trying to use the right word, not grief, but like there's a recovery period after you get fired from your dream job. And I think Toronto was like his dream job, right? He got to coach the
Yeah,
Maple Leafs. He's, from there. Um,
right.
the Devils kind of, from what I understand, they kind of talked him into considering the job, and then with everything, there's reports out there that they paid him quite the sum to get him to come because they had to pay him more than what Toronto was paying him,
Of course, yeah.
so to just to make it make sense to him.
Right.
Excuse me. So there's a lot that went there, but then his family's still in Toronto, so he's traveling a lot. Like there's a lot to get used to last year, and I think that grind wore on him.
Mhm.
Because if you remember, November 10th last year, I was looking at because curious. On November 10th of last year, the Devils were in first place.
Right.
So it's not like they started off slow. They started off
Mhm.
very fast. And then they had the insane December where they stayed in first place. And then they kind of putt throughout the rest of the season.
Mhm.
So I think that Sheldon Keefe is the kind of guy that's good. He's not going to let these excuses stand. He's really, it's not that he's hard on the guys, but it's that he doesn't accept mediocrity. And I think that
Right.
this is a group that's really good at that, really good at like getting the most out of the team. And here's the thing, it's a lot of injuries. This is still a very talented team. This is still Jesper Bratt and Nico Hischier and a much better Dawson Mercer and
Mhm.
Timo Myers. He's not March Timo, but he's a much better player than he was the first 3 months of last year.
Right.
You still got Luke Hughes. You still, Sema Nemitz is incredible the past 3 or 4 weeks. Um, Siegenthaler's having a rough start to the season, but he still has those moments where he looks like Jacob Slavin, with the poke checks and like the crazy blocks and things like that.
Mhm.
You have immense talent on this team, even on those worst nights.
Right.
They cap again. You really stretched it on Saturday against Washington. There was nobody in that lineup, outside
No.
of the guys I just mentioned. Um, but that's where you get the guys. Nemitz, even at his worst, always had this clutch gene.
Oh, yeah.
I spoke to Nemitz at the Stadium Series just to kind of get his thoughts, and like that was a point where he was playing really well.
Yeah.
And at the time, he was what, 20 at the time or 19? Like
He was,
incredibly
I
young.
think, almost 20 by that time, yeah. I think
Yeah.
he was.
So like, this is a guy who what happened is and I think it's happened with a lot of guys. And I think this goes back to what Keith was talking about with the comfortability. Um, I think a lot of guys were like, "What are my expectations last year?"
Mhm.
And it was almost like they were trying to like their brain wasn't the brain wasn't computing what the next move was supposed to be.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people had trouble with Keith's system off the bat. And honestly, I don't want to speculate too much, but I think there was a reason why Ryan McGill didn't return. I think there was
Mm.
like, if you remember, Ryan McGill had 3 different defensive systems while he was here.
Right.
So
Right.
it seemed like his system, like he was trying to jumble too many things together. I thought Ryan McGill had moments, but then when he changed something, it started to go downhill. Um, I think bringing in Brad Shaw, who's probably a defensive genius, like he's one of the
Yeah.
best assistant coaches in the NHL, that really brought like an easier way to understand the defensive responsibilities for the Devils.
Mhm.
And I think that goes such a long way in, even when like, people talk about the analytics like XG and all this other stuff. The reason why the Devils aren't very good in there is they give up too many rebounds. But I'd rather that than what you were having last year, where you're giving up 2-on-1s all the time and
Oh,
breakaways and like these
breakaways, yeah.
incredible chances.
It
You,
felt like every game we were giving up 3 or 4, like, a night, and it was just like,
yeah,
"What's happening?"
that's not happening this year. You're
No.
getting you're getting chances in close, which you don't want. They do have to clean that part up, and like
Right.
you got to teach Nemitz to just knock a guy out. And like Dylan's the only guy doing it. Dylan's having an incredible season,
Yeah.
but you got in like Hamilton too. Like just hit the guy. Like
100%.
he's hitting guys in open ice, but he's got to get better at hitting guys that are slapping at the goalie.
Right.
But I'd rather have that
Mhm.
where it's this high danger chance by nature or by positioning, but Allen and Markstrom are sitting right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they have a little bit more control of the situation. Whereas a 2-on-1, there's just too many variables and there's too many different things that can happen there.
Mhm.
And that shows me that this team knows their defensive responsibility. They're not going to let big plays happen behind them. Somebody's always in front of the play or
For
behind,
sure.
or in front of the puck. They keep the puck in front of them on the defensive side, whether in the offensive zone or defensive zone.
Mhm.
Um, and even like the big thing last year was guys sneaking in the offensive zone and scoring that goal, right? Like there'd be two guys staring at the guy in the corner, and then from behind the guy would come and
Right.
just get an easy, one timer. A lot of those things aren't happening this year.
Right.
So I think that I just think Keefe and Shaw have come together to do an incredible job with this team.
For sure, and I think with, I remember I wrote a piece on when the Devils originally hired Brad Shaw. I wrote it for Pucks and Pitchforks, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember realizing that, like, he got a lot of credit for the development of Zach Werenski into the kind of
Mm-hmm.
defenseman that he is in Columbus. Also, Jamie Drysdale when he was in Philadelphia, and you know, I knew that Sheldon Keefe at some point was going to want more guys that either he knows or like he just wanted his own guys. Like it kind of felt weird at first when he kept almost everybody last year, but I
Mm-hmm.
also assumed that Fitzgerald maybe told him to do that. I don't want to speculate on that, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it was clear the Devils needed to fix some things defensively, and like you brought up with Brad Shaw, they've cleaned up some things. And yeah, like they still have work to do, but also again, like considering the situation that even the Devils are in right now with several of their main defensemen out, I think Brad Shaw is doing a fairly, good job. And you bring up Shimon Nemec and you look at what he's done, right? I mean, he's had numerous games now where he has not only scored but just been a big part of the team's success. It to me, Nick, it kind of goes back to I think about when the Devils got back from that West Coast road trip, and a lot of people were really getting on Nemec. He had a couple of rough outings, especially against Anaheim. It just didn't look good. He has a fairly decent game against Montreal, especially with Pesci. Excuse me, not Pesci. Hamilton coming out, leaving the game early. And then I think about the play he made at the end of overtime in the win against Pittsburgh, where he made that diving play
Mm-hmm.
to get the puck out. And I'm sure he wasn't trying to make a pass, but it just worked out that it got to Jack where he could just wind up and take a shot right at the end of overtime. Didn't score, but it was like that was the first time that we really were like, wow, that was really heads up, very noticeable, not just from an analytics perspective, but from the eye test. And then he has that unbelievable game against Chicago. And then he gets the shootout game winner against Washington, despite the audio of MSG being 2 seconds behind for whatever reason. That was such a drag to get through.
Well, he
But
also had he tied the game against the Islanders with
right, and he tied the
5
game.
seconds
Right,
left.
of
Yeah.
course, of course. And so
Yeah.
now you have several games in a row, especially offensively, and like you mentioned, that clutch gene where we're like, okay, now we can see what he's doing, and it's making things much more interesting, not just in the now, if he can continue to play this way, but looking forward, not in the for the trade deadline and moving into next year. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think Brad Shaw and also the coaching of Sheldon Keefe has been a big part of that. And one thing that I did want to bring up that you mentioned with Sheldon Keefe is this. I think that as a collective in that locker room, I think these guys love playing for Keefe. I think they want to run through a brick wall for him, just the way that he talks to the team, the way he's brutally honest with them, not just probably in the locker room, certainly, but also in the media as well. Like he'll just be honest with us about like what needs to get better. And I think just holding these guys more accountable has moved them into a level where they're not just like this super streaky team. They're finding different ways to compete, win games, and get through this kind of adversity. And we're not expecting them to win the next 30 games that Jack Hughes doesn't play. That's just not going to happen. But if we're going to continuously see this team put its best foot forward and compete, they're going to get good results more often than not, just because of the talent of this team, even without Jack in the lineup. So, and I think a lot of credit does belong to Sheldon Keefe. And I do agree that I think he should be towards the top of, at least for now, the Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year, because he's done a bang up job. But now, like you said, we're in the main event. This is like, now it's the big time, because with Jack being out, it's like, can this team erase what everybody says about them about, well, when Jack gets out of the lineup, this team falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the big thing going into this stretch here of games, including tonight against Tampa Bay.
Let me paint a quick picture for you, just to kind of show, and for your fans, for the listeners here. If the Devils win 15 of these 30 games, I think they're talented enough to win half of these games. I think a lot of them, like, again, I think there's a lot of winnable games in there. They need to win 15 games. If they win 15 games, Neil, let's say they go 15, 12, and 3. They will have 60 points with 47 games played. That's still on a trajectory of, I'm not great at the math thing, but I think that's a trajectory of like 105 points.
Right. 105, 110 range kind of points. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that can win the division, or you're going to come in second. It's probably going to be 1-2 with Carolina and New Jersey. I don't see a Washington like run out of any of the other teams. I like what the Islanders are doing right now. I don't think it's sustainable because they're kind of riding. I do think a rookie wall is coming for their 18-year-old defenseman, and he's kind of driving everything they're doing right now. I love Schaefer. I think he's an incredible talent. He's going to waltz to the Calder Trophy.
Oh, yeah.
But we've seen the rookie wall be hit before, and it just kind of. So I think I think New York, the Islanders can make the playoffs, definitely, but I don't think they're going to have that, like I said, Washington-like run. New York is riding, the Rangers are riding high, but I don't get it because it seems like they're doing it kind of with smoke and mirrors. Like, I know that their analytics look pretty good, but when I watched the games, I was like, this doesn't look like a great team. Again, can make the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they made it as a 3-seed or a wild card. But I would be floored if they pass the Devils and the Hurricanes, even with this Jack Hughes injury. And you look at the rest of the division. Columbus hasn't been what we had a lot hoped that they would. They didn't take the jump. The Flyers, they looked all right to start, but I think they're coming back to down to earth and who's the new coach there? Why am I?
Rick Tocchet.
Rick Tocchet. Yeah, a lot of the things he's doing is kind of. He's a hard coach, and that can bring some inconsistency in that first year. I think Rick Tocchett's going to be a great coach for Philly in the long term, but I think this year you're going to see some rough patches while people figure out the expectations. Yeah, and then Washington, we saw what they were on Saturday night. Something's wrong in Washington right now, so I just think that they need some things. I love Carberry. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league, but a lot has to get fixed there. And then there's Pittsburgh, who I don't really know. I think they're riding high right now, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Something just tells me that they're riding really hot goaltending.
For sure.
I don't think that's going to last. So when I look at the division, 15 games. It's not that hard to ask this team to win 15 games. There's a nice little break in there at Christmas. whatever you did at Christmas last year, do the opposite. If you open presents on Christmas morning, light them on fire on Christmas morning. like do the exact opposite of what you did on Christmas, because you don't want to you don't want that to happen again.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this and I'm weirdly optimistic because they keep winning games. They don't give me a reason to not be optimistic.
But I
keeps
can
winning
sense,
games.
I don't know if I'm misunderstanding this, Nick, but it kind of looks like it's like a slight cautiously optimistic kind of vibe, just because like they're winning, but it's also like maybe you're waiting for the next thing to drop. That's
I
gonna
mean,
like
common sense says I should be worried. Jack Hughes
right.
is gone for 2 months
Of course,
or
right.
8 weeks. Like we have a laundry list of injuries. Only the Panthers and Vegas are more injured than the Devils. And Vegas is always injured. They always like play around with injuries, and they
And then they stick everybody on LTIR and have money to spend.
So they're basically the Dodgers. Like it's we don't need Blake Snell and Mookie
We
Betts
don't
to play
need
the whole
them,
season.
but we'll take them anyway. Sure.
Right. So I look at this Devils team. And yeah, we haven't even talked about how Nico Hischier hasn't been at his best. Like he hasn't been nearly what he's supposed to be.
I wondered to myself about him that if he's dealing with something like physically, like I'm not like I not a. It doesn't remind me too much, but I remember with Bratt last year, like we didn't even know he was dealing with something, and then the season ends and he gets surgery, and obviously he's playing at the same level that we've seen him before, but it wasn't like it was noticeable last year that something was off. So I wonder if Nico's dealing with something that, like, obviously he can play through and it's not too bad, but it might be a nagging thing that maybe keeps him a small step behind, because again, he's also facing every team's top line the entire game. And so
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's injured. I
Okay.
know a lot of people are speculating that he might be dealing with something. I think he's just his competition is insane.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to change tonight against Tampa. I'll tell you that.
Right. And again, like that's his role. But the thing about the Jack Hughes injury that makes me the most upset is I was so excited for the lines they put together for that Chicago game.
Oh, yeah.
Where they had Mercer and Gritzik with Hughes. And then, what was it, Meyer, Bratt, and Hischier?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was going to unlock Hischier. Bratt is great with Hughes. But and I said this on the Let's Go Devils podcast, the problem with Bratt and Hughes is that that Hughes is going to drive.
Mm-hmm.
You know that Hughes is going to drive the offense. And he does a great job of it, even though you know it's coming. But, like, it's like when Derrick Henry was on the Titans. Like, Derrick Henry is still going to get 1,400 yards. But, like, in those big moments, like, you put 8 in the box.
Right.
I think, teams were doing the equivalent of putting 8 in the box. And then, you kind of take out Bratt's goal scoring completely.
Mm-hmm.
With Hischier and Meyer, it really spread the defense out, and you were starting to see, even in that Chicago game, Hischier was starting to get looks.
He had a breakaway in that game. Almost scored on that. Yep.
Yeah, so Hischier was definitely looking better. I'm not recalling who he's with right now, but I think that Hischier's issues is a matter of circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I also think we look at those J Fresh cards a little too closely, and we're like, oh, he's 39% defense. We're even talking about him in the Selkie. It's like, look at how many goals are scored against him. Look at how many high danger chances are put up against him. Like you got to like look at the nuances of these things and not just look at a card and take it at face value. So is Hischier having his best season? No. Is he having a good season? I still think he's having a good season. He just needs to finish more. He only has 3 goals? That's not good enough. He does need to have I need him to have a goal every 4 games. I need him to have at least 25 goals by the end of the season. I want him to have 30. If he's healthy the whole season, knock on wood. I got wood paneling on my house, so that was convenient.
Let's all just knock on wood collectively.
Yeah. I think that I don't think he's injured. I think he's getting used to a role. I don't think he was, but and the main thing, you brought up the breakaway. I think being with Brett allowed him to be a little bit more aggressive in
Mhm.
turning defense into offense,
Right.
right? Because that's why you have Brett and Hughes together. Because when they get stuck in the defensive zone, you know that they can break out and turn it into offensive chance at a moment's notice.
Mhm.
But they were always in the offensive zone, so that
Yep.
value wasn't there. It was still there on the penalty kill,
Sure.
but everywhere else you weren't getting that value because they were always in the offensive zone.
Right.
While Heischer is always in the defensive zone and needs that breakout. And I think
Mhm.
Bratt can break out for him. So again, I don't know if Heischer and Bratt, I'm trying to remember if they kept that line together.
They in the game against Wash, I believe they did. So I don't know
Okay.
what I don't know. I would like to hope because they didn't have any lines today because it was optional
Yeah.
morning skates. So we'll see. We'll see in a few hours what Keith decides to do with especially with the top six. And
Okay.
again, with some of the guys potentially coming back, Dodonov, Brown. I'm just focusing on the forwards.
Sure.
With Dodonov potentially coming back, Brown maybe coming back. I wonder if things would change, if Keith would flip things around a little bit to try to. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what he ends up doing if those guys do play because they are going to take warm ups today.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
so we'll keep an eye on it. But I think overall, I would say that like it does suck, right? That
Mhm.
Jack's out, regardless of how you feel about it. I mean, it sucks. And like you said, the most important guy that's upset about it is Jack himself
Yeah.
because of just the fact that he's having such a strong year already, and he just looked like a guy that was going to be able to reach high levels of scoring and just point gathering in general.
That's
But
the thing. He looked like he was going to break out. He had 20 points in
right,
17 games and he hadn't broken out yet.
no,
Like
he
he looked
hadn't
like he
had
was going to go like on a 15 points in 5 games type
yeah,
bender.
and I think all you could do is hope that when he comes back, that he can still be at that level. Maybe it might take him a little bit more time. I mean, it's going to take him a little time anyway, just because he's coming back from injury and he will have not played a game in about 2 months by the
Yeah.
time that comes around. So, again, the center depth is a little bit, not a little bit, but there's a decent obvious thing there. Again, like you mentioned with guys like Cody Glass also injured, and we'll see what happens with him. So now you're definitely going to have to see guys like Lamico and Glendening play in higher roles than maybe they were originally expected. But one thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on, because you and I have kind of gone back and forth on this on social, is talking about what the Devils need to do in order to improve their center depth. Anyway, even before
Mhm.
Jack got hurt, we were looking at the Devils need a third line center at least, and one guy that has been brought up a bunch of times is Ryan O'Reilly from Nashville.
Yeah.
And again, you know, there isn't really a whole lot of talks in terms of Nashville is definitely trying to move him. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he has a no trade clause or he has a
Mhm.
modified no
He
move.
has he has nothing.
He has nothing. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
So he has nothing. So he can be dealt without having
Right.
to ask him really
What you're
essentially.
what you're thinking of is Barry Trotz said he's treating him as if he
He's
has one,
right.
but he doesn't have one. So
Okay.
like if there's a souring of that relationship, Trotz can send him wherever he wants.
Fair enough. And through 20 games so far, Ryan O'Reilly, not bad. 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points. Again, these are just basic stats. And he has 1 year left on his current contract after this season. So
Mm.
if the Devils were able to acquire him, they would be able to have him in the lineup, not just for the rest of this season, but going into next year. And
Mhm.
really, the question that has been on people's minds as I've seen, I don't know why I lost him all of a sudden. There we go. Ignore that. Everybody ignore that here on YouTube. But the the big thing that I've seen people ask is like, all right, so like how can the salary work? Which I
Mhm.
know you've kind of brought up, several times on social, and be like, what would the Devils have to give up potentially to
Mhm.
acquire Ryan O'Reilly? Because the other thing is, for other people to understand, there are also a lot of other teams out there that we've already heard are looking to try to add center depth. Maybe Montreal now enters the fold with Kirby Doc being out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Um, And I think, and I just want to finish by saying that, like, the Devils still need to do this because while O'Reilly could be that second line center, at least right now in the absence of Jack Hughes, if you have him there also as a third line center when Jack comes back, I mean, that right there, you would have a healthy center depth of Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Ryan O'Reilly, and Cody Glass, which I think is very, very good when you look at it and look at what they're capable of doing. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the potential of maybe getting Ryan O'Reilly.
I mean, I think Ryan O'Reilly is the most sensible player to add on paper. Unfortunately, and I've shared this, I think Barry Trotz treats. Do you know when you're in a fantasy football league with a bunch
As
of
I
your
am.
friends, but like your brother's also in there, who you're the closest with?
Yeah,
You don't want everyone to see your brother win the trade with you in fantasy football.
right,
And I feel like Barry Trotz and Tom Fitzgerald are friends. They go back to the Nashville days.
right.
Um, I don't think Trotz. I think Trotz gives Fitzgerald a different price than everyone else. It's
Hmm.
almost like he's giving him the in division price, right?
Right.
Like the Rangers are going to make the Devils pay more than they're going to make the Minnesota Wild.
Sure.
I think that's the price that Fitzgerald gets on all these players, and that's why I think they're always talking to friends. They're always kind of like in the ring. I think that's why Holla went to Nashville. I think so that because they're always having these conversations. I know that Fitzgerald called on O'Reilly last year. I know he
Hmm.
did. I know the price that I was told. I don't trust my source enough to like reveal it because it might be wrong. But the price was psychotic, like psychotic.
Yeah, I remember Fitzgerald also saying, more or less that like the price was just way too much
The
for to
prices
get him.
are insane last year and this
Yeah.
year because nobody's going to free agency. I think that's the trickle down effect of everything.
Hmm.
You can't upgrade unless you trade. So, and then everybody's in it because of all these overtime games. So the sellers are like, think about it. Pittsburgh was supposed to be the biggest seller this year, and they're in the playoffs. They're not
Right.
selling Russ. They're not selling Raquel. So, who are your sellers? You got Calgary, who's intriguing because they have a lot of interesting forwards.
Hmm.
You got Nashville, who's got some of the biggest names in the sport. O'Reilly's not even the third biggest name that might be traded from Nashville with Marchessault and Stamkos.
Stamkos.
So you do have that working for you, but I think if you the problem is like when's the trade deadline? Like March 7th.
Mm.
It's November 18th.
Right.
If you're asking for O'Reilly right now, what's to stop Trotz to say, "Let me know when Nemitz is part of the deal,"
Mm.
and then just wait.
Right.
What is his motivation to trade him now? There's really just none.
There's none
Even
because
if
it's so
even
early
if
in
he
the
thinks
year.
it's a lost season,
Right.
he's not going to do it for Seamus Casey in the second round pick. I
No.
just don't think he's going to do it. He might in March.
Right.
He might do it for less than that in March.
It's true. It's true.
But he's going to wait to see if like Toronto's desperate, Montreal is desperate. Um, there's another team that's desperate for a center right now. Vancouver. I mean, they
Vancouver.
just got comped, but that's not.
Yeah,
They need a second line center.
that's true.
And that's the thing with that was the thing that I explained a lot as far as the offseason goes. Why didn't you get a third line center? Well, you want a second line level center on the third line. You wanted O'Reilly. They wanted all these different guys that are kind of these tweener guys. Those guys are playing second line on Montreal and second line
Right.
on Tampa, or not Tampa, but they're right now they're playing second line in Florida because Florida's devastated by injuries. So
Hmm.
I think which teams are desperate for centers
Hmm.
really impacts the price. And I think that the price for O'Reilly is going to be too prohibitive. And I think that you're going to see them pivot to a guy you're not thinking of like Cody Glass last year.
Right.
A lot of people said like, oh, you're probably looking at Cody Glass already. And that's all you're going to do to replace Jack Hughes. It's like, well, the price to replace Jack Hughes is, your top prospects. Like it's still it's
Right.
it's Nemeth, and it's even Casey. Like you don't want to just give that guy away for a run,
Right.
and you have to remember, Neil, the Quinn Hughes trade is happening within the next year.
It's
You
fair.
have to save assets for that.
Yeah, you have to have the assets for a deal to make sense for both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
If you give up 2 first-round picks for a center, you're not making a Quinn Hughes trade because
Right.
Vegas will pay for it to get him for a
Mhm.
year. Or
And I'm sure that's
Toronto will sure as heck.
yeah.
Toronto is the team I'm afraid of when it comes to Quinn Hughes because I think they're looking at the roster right now and they're like, it's a mess.
Right.
We'll give you Nyes to get Quinn
Ooh,
Hughes for 2 years. And
right.
then Vancouver's like, what are the Devils going to do that's going to match Nyes?
Right.
Like I think they're going to do something insane because their defense is a mess. And the Devils' defense,
Oh yeah.
like Quinn Hughes, is a luxury.
Right.
Are you going to give up Nemitz and Mercer in a first after how they started the season? When you think he's going to come in free agency,
Mm-hmm.
so you have to kind of like be really strategically like your assets because you want to put together a like what they did with Timo Meyer. They put together a prohibitive package that didn't destroy them. Right? They didn't give up Holtz, and we thought that was a big win at the time.
Right.
They gave up Zetterland, who seemed like a good guy, but you know you didn't need him. We ended up needing him the next
And he's
year.
not even in San Jose anymore. I mean, they dealt him
Right,
last year in a shocking deal to Ottawa. So
right. You gave up
mm,
Mook Madulin and a Hoytuk, who you weren't going to have room for anyway.
right.
And then you gave up 2 picks. I know there's other pieces there, but like those are like the main pieces. So
Right.
you want to do something like that. The Devils have a lot of assets. Um, do you really want to give up like all of your good ones just to get a center in your desperate position when Jack is going to be here in 8 weeks? I just don't think they're going to.
And I think the other thing, at least with the Quinn Hughes situation, is that like you have to wonder. I mean, the assumption is that if you're going to trade Quinn Hughes from Vancouver's perspective, you are basically signaling the rebuild. Like you are
Yeah.
signaling more or less that you are looking to go to that direction. So it's really going to be interesting to see like what Vancouver would want. But again, we're not even at that point yet. But it is a very valid point in the now because if you give up a ton of assets now, then if you try to make a deal for someone like Quinn Hughes in another year, you're not going to have as much that's going to be interesting to Vancouver. And Vancouver is not just going to give Quinn Hughes away for nothing,
Sure.
considering that they're like the Jim Rutherford has basically said our whole basically plan right now is to get Quinn Hughes to want to be here long term. Every move is to keep it from happening that he would want out. So it's a weird it's a weird situation. I mean, Jim Rutherford is brutally honest, which I guess we give him props for that. He's just calling it like it is in terms of this if his situation. But I think
Mm.
overall, I think what it comes down to for the Devils is I think right now they'll probably keep it status quo in terms of like who's on the roster, and then we'll just kind of see how things go later on, like you brought up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think so.
So, that's where we're at with that. And so the last thing I wanted to do really quickly here before we sign off is I wanted to look at the Devils schedule. Again, the Devils continue on with their road trip starting tonight in Tampa Bay. Already the second time the Devils are in Tampa Bay against the Lightning. Then they'll also play the Florida Panthers for the second time. They'll be in Florida on the 20th, which is Thursday. And then they'll wrap up this road trip with a game in Philadelphia against the Flyers. But what's really interesting when you look at that, not even just this week, Nick, but moving forward, the Devils play starting tonight 11 games in I think it was 18 or 19 days. So the
Mm.
Devils have a very limited amount of days off. And I remember telling you that before we jumped on and you just shook your head and were just like, this is ridiculous. So like, what are your thoughts on like how much that schedule like is just compacted right now starting tonight?
I don't think you've seen the last of the injuries.
Fair enough.
I think the compact schedule and everybody's facing it. There's just a lot of injuries around the league. And it's a lot of soft tissue injuries. It's a lot of, you know, these things like things that people usually get up from. They're not because I just got hit that hard 2 days ago, or it just
Yeah.
hit that hard yesterday. That's happening again, and now it's starting to impact some things. The schedule was prohibitive. I think it's going to I think the team that's going to win the Stanley Cup this year, Neil, is the team that survives.
Right.
That's
I
really
agree.
just what it's going to be.
Yep.
And again, if the Devils have all their injuries now, then I think it'll be if they get back and they get healthy and they get hot in March and April, I think this team could be a contender. But again, right now it's going to be rough.
It's going to be rough. And I think, at the end of the day, the Devils are going to have to just, as the old saying goes, take it one game at a time, starting tonight in Tampa. And, you just, as a fan, you just have to kind of pray that after every game that somebody just doesn't come up limping. I mean, when Brat got, basically destroyed by Ovechkin on that goal, like right before the Luke Hughes goal, I mean, we all definitely held our breath for a period of time. And, he was able to come back and ended up being okay. I don't know if it was just the wind got knocked out of him or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be, but it's like that's what the reality is, especially with the condensed schedule, that it's going to be a challenge. But, as we've seen from the Talos episode, I mean, they continue to show resilience. And I don't think there's any reason to think, at least on my end, why this team won't continue to do that moving forward. So,
Sure.
we'll see. We'll see starting tonight. We'll see how things go and we'll go from there. But Nick, this was great. Really, really appreciate you coming on, man, and taking this hour to jump on with me. Really want to definitely have you back on
Sure.
down the road. Before I let you go, though, because I do this with all my guests, I like to essentially roll out the red carpet and give you the floor to kind of, let the folks know where they can check out all the stuff for Pucks and
Yeah.
Pitchforks, where they can interact with you and everything else, especially also with the Let's Go Devils podcast. So, floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, we'll start pucks and pitchforks. We have extensive coverage of the Jack Hughes injury. Obviously, we have how it's impacting his legacy. I think it's a bigger impact to his legacy than we're kind of letting on. That, like I said, that's the first thing. So Charlie Borges Jr. wrote that story. We have how it's going to impact his ability to make the Olympics. I don't think it's a guarantee he's going to make the Olympics, even if he makes it back in time. I think they
Mhm.
might kind of look at the Tage Thompsons of the world and some of the people who didn't make it to Four Nations. I think Jack Hughes already had to prove he was better than those guys, which he was doing, but now he's hurt. So
Right.
that's on pucksandpitchforks.com. We have plenty on Nemitz and his rise, and we're gonna have plenty of game coverage from tonight's game against Tampa, and then the Let's Go Devils podcast tomorrow. We're doing the State of the Fan address. We have a guest. I haven't confirmed with her yet, but somebody who's around the Devils daily.
Mm,
So we're gonna have that on the Let's Go Devils podcast tomorrow. That's tomorrow at 8:30 p.m.
awesome.
So yeah, be there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, Nick, thank you so much for your time today, man. Really do appreciate it. Like I said before, we'll definitely have you back on. But yeah, I'm sure my listeners really appreciate your insight on everything going on with this team right now. And we'll definitely talk soon. All right.
Thanks, guys.